I stayed silent while everyone stood and applauded. A few hours later, the dean called my name to the stage. Their faces turned pale. Have you ever felt so proud you could burst, yet so shattered you could barely breathe? That was exactly how I felt holding the bouquet of white lilies in my hands. Those were Benjamin's favorite flowers since childhood, back when we used to stroll around the park together and he would stop to admire the lily bushes by the pond. That morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., stopped by the flower shop before it even opened, because I knew he liked the ones with perfect petals, without a single scratch. I wore my navy blue dress, the same one I had worn at my niece's wedding 3 years earlier. It wasn't designer clothing, but it was neat and clean. I had hand-stitched some embroidery along the collar myself. I sprayed a bit of cheap, lavender perfume from the drugstore, the kind that always gave me confidence. I arrived early at the university auditorium, heart pounding. 30 years of working beside a sewing machine, long nights under dim light, fingers pricked with needles, eyes burning from the thread, all so Benjamin could earn this business degree. My only son, the boy I raised alone after my husband, Richard, died in a car accident when Benjamin was just 7. I sat in the third row, right by the aisle, hoping he'd see me when he entered. I wanted him to know I was there, as I always had been. I gripped the bouquet so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, yet I kept smiling. That smile tried to hide the heaviness inside me, the ache that had lingered for 2 years since Stella came into our lives. And then I saw him. Benjamin appeared through the side door, tall and handsome in the gray suit Stella had given him for his birthday, an Armani worth over $4,000. She had bragged about it in front of everyone. My chest tightened. I raised my hand to wave. He saw me. I knew he did. Our eyes met for a split second, but instead of smiling, he looked away. Then I saw Stella striding behind him, elegant in a beige silk dress, dripping in jewelry, her heels clicking against the wooden floor like a declaration of power. Her hair was in a perfect bun, her makeup flawless, her triumphant smile that of someone who had just won a battle I didn't even know existed. Benjamin looked back at me, then turned to Stella and held out his hand. "Miss Stella, would you walk with me?" Her faux surprised expression came with a poisonous curve of her lips. "But your mother is right there, Benjamin." He didn't look at me when he answered. "I know, but I'd rather go with you." "You fit better, ma'am." Then he took a deep breath and said, word by word, "You embarrass me, Mom." Everything around me froze. People kept chatting, laughing, adjusting their clothes, but inside me, there was only a hollow silence, heavy like molten lead. "You embarrass me." I looked down at the bouquet. The white petals suddenly seemed dull. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to ask, "Embarrassed of what, Benjamin? Because I don't have a college degree? Because my clothes aren't French label? Because my hands are rough from honest work?" But I said nothing. I swallowed it all the same way I had swallowed every other hurt before. Stella walked past me, her arm looped through my son's, leaving behind the scent of expensive imported perfume, a fragrance that cost more than my weekly paycheck. Brenda, her daughter and Benjamin's fiancée, followed behind, smiling and waving as if walking a runway. I sat alone in the third row with the bouquet that suddenly felt as heavy as stone. The worst part was that no one noticed. No one asked if I was all right. No one found it strange that the graduate's real mother sat apart while a gray stranger walked beside him. The ceremony went on as if nothing had happened, but something had. Something inside me broke. I looked up at the stage and saw Benjamin smiling for pictures with Stella, who held his hand like she was his real mother. Brenda posed for selfies, while Stella straightened his tie with an intimacy that made me feel invisible. I wasn't just sad, I was furious. Furious at myself for letting it get this far. Furious at Benjamin for choosing appearances over love. Furious at Stella for planting contempt in my son's heart. But then I remembered what was in my purse, a small, discreet white envelope. Inside was the invitation I had received 3 weeks earlier, something Benjamin knew nothing about. Sitting there alone, with wilted lilies on my lap, I made a decision. I would let the ceremony finish, and then they would learn who should really feel ashamed. I took a deep breath, wiped away my tears, and waited. Patience has always been my greatest weapon, and this time, I was going to use it fully. If you want to know what was inside that envelope and how everything turned around, make sure to subscribe because what came next will make your heart race. You might wonder, how did we end up here? How did the boy I once cradled in my arms, stayed up with through feverish nights, taught to ride a bike until my hands went numb, become a man who felt ashamed of his own mother? The answer has a name: Stella Campbell. It all began 2.5 years ago when Benjamin met Brenda at a friend's graduation party. Brenda was beautiful, I'll admit that. Golden hair, manicured nails, always dressed in gym wear that probably cost more than my rent. She was the only daughter of Stella, a wealthy widow who owned 3 luxury home decor stores in Washington, D.C. At first, I liked Brenda. She was polite, always smiling, sometimes bringing pastries when she joined us for dinner. But then Stella appeared. I remember that Sunday. "Morning, clearly," Benjamin called, excited. "Mom, Brenda wants you to meet her mother. Let's have lunch together." I agreed, happy, thinking, great, her family wants to get to know us. I wore a floral blouse I'd sewn myself and brought a jar of homemade vanilla pudding. The restaurant was in upscale Georgetown, complete with valet parking, cushioned chairs, and waiters who called you ma'am with a hint of superiority. Stella was already seated when we arrived. She stood to greet us. Everything about her screamed money: gold watch, genuine leather purse, perfectly trimmed hair that must have cost $100. "Nice to meet you. I'm Stella," she said, brushing both cheeks in a faint air kiss, barely touching me, as if afraid of catching dust. "Benjamin has told me so much about you." I smiled and handed her the pudding. I brought some homemade vanilla pudding, my grandmother's recipe. She looked at it, smiled thinly. "Oh, how quaint. Thank you." Then set it aside, never touching it again. The lunch was painfully awkward. Stella asked seemingly harmless questions with sharp edges hidden underneath. "You're still sewing for a living, Lori?" "Yes, I've done it since I was 20. "How interesting. But it must be hard to make money nowadays, isn't it? With all the cheap clothes from China." Benjamin gave a weak chuckle. Brenda stayed silent. I swallowed hard. "I manage." "Of course," Stella said with a smile. "And where do you live?" "Silver Spring, in a 2-bedroom apartment." "Oh, Silver Spring. That's quite far, isn't it?" "Must be inconvenient." "I have a 1998 Beetle, old but still runs fine." Brenda laughed. "That's adorable. My grandma used to have one of those." "Really cute." It sounded like she was talking about an antique. Stella turned to Benjamin. "You know, now that you're about to graduate, you should start building serious connections. I have some friends in big companies who could open doors for you." Benjamin's eyes lit up. "Really? Thank you so much." "Of course. You're smart and hardworking, you just need to be in the right environment. And you should polish your image a bit: clothes, manners, social circle." It hurt, but I said, "Benjamin already dresses well." Stella gave me a quick glance and smiled. "Certainly, Lori. But the corporate world has its own standards. I just want to help your son reach his full potential." From that day on, Benjamin began spending weekends at Stella's place. She lived in a luxurious penthouse, 3 bedrooms, open kitchen, private pool. My son came home glowing, full of stories about fancy dinners, fine wine, business talk. Gradually, my modest little home seemed too small for him. "Mom, don't you think it's time to replace this old sofa? It looks worn out." "You still use plastic tablecloths?" "They look cheap." "That painting in the living room is outdated." Each comment pierced my heart. Stella gave him expensive watches, imported suits, invited him to elite events. With every gift, every dinner, I felt him slipping further away. Then one day he said, "Mom, Miss Stella thinks I should take a business etiquette course." "She'll pay for it." "You don't need that," I said. "You already know how to treat people kindly," he snapped. "You don't get it, Mom. The world out there isn't Silver Spring. It's not about sewing machines or old cars. I need to go further." My heart broke. It was the first time my son told me that I wasn't enough. I didn't argue. I bowed my head and kept sewing the curtains I had to deliver the next morning. I had to keep working, if not, I'd fall apart. Stella continued her plan, as cunning as a weed spreading through a garden. She never attacked me directly. She simply built a world where I no longer belonged. And Benjamin, my son, chose that world. He chose lavish dinners over home-cooked meals. He chose Stella's advice over mine. He chose to feel ashamed of me instead of proud. But that graduation day, when he said, "You embarrass me," I realized Stella hadn't just intruded into our lives, she had replaced me. What they didn't know was that I had never truly disappeared. And sometimes, when the light shifts, shadows reveal more than you expect. 3 months before the graduation, I received an invitation that should have made me happy, but instead filled me with unease. It was a Friday afternoon when I got a text from Brenda. "Mother-in-law, my mom would love to host a small dinner to get to know you better. 8 p.m. tomorrow, at our place. Okay?" Benjamin already confirmed. Mother-in-law. The way she said it sounded so distant, a hollow title, nothing more. I hesitated, my gut telling me to decline and come up with an excuse. But I thought, if I don't go, they'll say I'm cold and uninterested in my son's life. I still had a foolish hope that dinner might mend things between us. Foolish indeed. Saturday morning, I woke with a knot in my stomach. I spent the whole morning wondering what to bring. I couldn't arrive empty-handed. My mother had raised me better. In the end, I decided to make Benjamin's childhood favorite, beef casserole with mashed potatoes and melted cheddar cheese, the meal I always cooked whenever he got good grades. I bought the best beef, mashed the potatoes smooth, sprinkled the cheese on top, placed it in an aluminum tray, covered it with plastic wrap, and tied a red ribbon from leftover sewing material. I wore black slacks and a light pink blouse with a bit of hand-stitched embroidery on the collar, my own design from a magazine pattern. I sprayed some lavender perfume, pinned up my hair neatly, looked in the mirror and told myself, "You look fine. Presentable. Decent." I took the bus, then the subway, then another bus, to the wealthy neighborhood on the west side of the city. Stella's penthouse was inside a gleaming glass building that looked like a 5-star hotel. There was a doorman in a suit, mirrored elevators, and the scent of expensive perfume drifting through the hallway. When the door opened, I felt like I had stepped into another world. Marble floors reflected the chandelier lights like ice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake. The decor looked straight out of a magazine, gray velvet sofas, a long hardwood dining table, crystal chandelier, paintings signed by artists I'd never heard of but could tell cost a fortune. Stella appeared in a knee-length black dress, pearls around her neck, hair softly curled, elegance cold as steel. Behind her, 2 maids were setting the table. "Lori, how lovely to see you," she said, glancing at the dish I was holding. "Oh, what's this? Beef casserole with mashed potatoes and cheese? A family recipe? How sweet." Her voice dripped, with mock sweetness. Then she turned to a maid. "Take it to the kitchen." The girl carried it away, and I had no idea whether it would be served or thrown away. Benjamin came in from the balcony, a glass of whiskey in hand. I froze. Since when did my son drink whiskey? He gave me a brief hug. "Hey, Mom, you made it." "Yes, son." "You still take the bus?" Brenda chimed in, wearing a floral silk dress. That must have been exhausting. Her tone was gentle, but the sting was sharp. Stella led us into the dining room. It looked like a royal banquet, gold-rimmed china, crystal glasses, silver cutlery gleaming under the chandelier, napkins folded into flowers. A vase of white orchids sat in the center, probably worth more than my electric bill for the month. I sat in the chair Stella indicated, feeling like an ink stain on a white cloth. The appetizer was raw salmon with capers. I didn't even know how to eat it properly, just tried to copy the others. The metallic taste filled my mouth. Stella opened a bottle of champagne. "This is Moet and Chandon, a special one I brought from Paris." She poured the golden bubbles into our glasses. I took a sip. Bitterness slid down my throat. Brenda began talking about their honeymoon plans. "My mom is gifting us a 15-day trip to Santorini. You know, mother-in-law, those white houses with blue roofs in Greece." "I've seen pictures," I said softly. Stella added with a half smile. "Completely different from anywhere you've ever been, I'm sure." The main course was beef in red wine sauce with asparagus and truffle mashed potatoes, beautiful, elegant, but soulless. It tasted like nothing from home. Then came dessert warm chocolate cake with vanilla ice cream. Stella asked, "Lori, how long have you lived in Silver Spring?" 22 years. Oh, and you've never thought of moving? There are much more developed areas. I like it there, I replied, calmly. I know my neighbors, and I have regular customers, Brenda cut in. Customers for your sewing business, right? Must be hard competing with big fashion brands, huh? I don't compete, I said. I make custom pieces. Stella smiled. Custom pieces, such a romantic way to say handmade, isn't it? Benjamin stayed quiet, staring at his plate. Stella continued, I always tell Benjamin, this world values sophistication, status, refinement. It's not just about intelligence, but about fitting in with the right people, building proper connections. My mom raised me alone and gave me a good education, Benjamin said softly. Of course, Stella replied, lifting her glass. But raising a child and preparing him for the real world are two very different things. The real world. The phrase hit me like a knife. As if my life was nothing but a dream, the swollen fingers, sleepless nights by the sewing machine, all imaginary. I looked at Benjamin, hoping he'd say something, anything. But he just took another sip of champagne. Brenda laughed at something that wasn't funny. Stella called for the maid to bring the coffee. When I stood up to say goodbye, it was almost 11 p.m. Stella gave me a polite hug. So lovely to meet you, Lori. We should do this more often. I forced a smile, knowing well it was just an empty courtesy. I caught the late-night bus home, the bitter taste of champagne still on my tongue, the weight of humiliation pressing against my chest. When I got home, I sat down on the faded sofa, the one Benjamin once said was embarrassing, and cried. That night, I realized I had lost my son. Not to another woman, but to a world that considered me too small to belong. And the cruelest part was that my own child thought the same. A week later, the bitterness still hadn't faded. But life went on, bills to pay, orders to finish. I returned to my routine, sewing machine humming, reheated. Coffee, the radio turned low, just to make the house feel less empty. Benjamin called to say he was going on a business trip with Brenda, a trip arranged by Stella. 3 days away. I decided to cook his favorite frozen meals, pack them carefully, and drop them off at his apartment, the apartment I had bought for him. When my husband Richard died, he left me a small piece of land on the outskirts of town, 5 acres, with a wooden house and some fruit trees. I held on to it for years as my last security. But when Benjamin went to college and wanted to live closer to campus, I sold the land. I sold it for $280,000, used it as a down payment, and paid off a 2-bedroom apartment in Arlington. I gave it to him as a 23rd birthday gift. This is for you to build your own life, I said. He hugged me, crying, and told me I was the best mother in the world. Funny to think about that now. I arrived at his apartment around 2 p.m., using the spare key he'd given me just in case of emergencies. Inside was exactly what I expected. Messy, clothes scattered everywhere, dishes piled in the sink. I put the food in the fridge, washed the dishes, then went into the bedroom to make the bed. That's when I saw a black leather folder left open on the desk. I hadn't planned to snoop, but a mother's instinct made me pause. I opened it. Inside were papers, internship contracts, certificates, receipts, and in the middle, a pale blue envelope. I opened it, and the world fell apart. It was a printed exchange of text messages between Brenda and Stella. Brenda, Mom, Ben's upset again about his mother. She came to his place unannounced and brought food. Stella, Lori needs to learn boundaries. They're adults now. Brenda, I know, but he still pities her. Probably because she raised him alone. Stella, pity doesn't build a future, sweetheart. When she passes away, Ben will inherit that house in Silver Spring. Easy to sell, maybe $350,000. Then we can buy that Jeep Compass you wanted. My hands began to shake. They were putting a price on my death. I kept reading. Another stack of papers detailed the wedding plan. Luxury venue, $85,000. Decoration, $60,000. Imported wedding gown, 45,000. Honeymoon in Santorini, 150,000. Total, 340,000. Below, in Brenda's handwriting, Mom will cover it all as long as Ben signs the prenup and stays away from limiting influences. Limiting influences. I was the limiting influence. There was also an email, subject line, partnership proposal. From Stella Campbell to Benjamin. Benjamin, as discussed, I'm formally extending my offer. 25% partnership in the new Campbell Interiors branch at the shopping mall. No capital investment required. Expected profit, $15,000 per month after the first year. Conditions: full-time commitment, participation in strategic meetings, and maintaining an image aligned with company standards. I know your mother is a strong woman, but the corporate environment requires separation from emotional ties that may affect your professional image. Think it over carefully. Stella. Separation from emotional ties. Affect your professional image. I was that tie. I sat down hard on the bed, legs weak. I took my phone and photographed every page, every message, every number. My hands trembled so badly that some were blurry, but still legible. I put everything back exactly as it was, zipped the folder, took a deep breath, and left the apartment, the one I'd bought by selling Richard's last piece of land. This time, I didn't just feel pain. I felt clarity. Clarity that I had been used. My son had traded me for the promise of an easier life. Stella wasn't just a meddling mother-in-law, she was a manipulator. And Brenda, she was Stella's younger version, perfectly trained to drain and discard. What hurt most wasn't Stella's cruelty or Brenda's greed, but Benjamin's silence. In all those messages, emails, and plans, not once did he defend me. He just accepted it, accepted my erasure from his life, accepted my invisibility, accepted that I was disposable. I rode home on a crowded midday bus. The sunlight burned my face, but I didn't feel it. When I reached my little house in Silver Spring, I sat down by my sewing machine, looked at the photos on my phone, and made a decision. I wouldn't confront them, not yet. I wouldn't scream, cry, or beg. I would wait. And when the time was right, they would understand that underestimating Lori Carter was the biggest mistake of their lives. In life, there are things we keep to ourselves not out of fear or shame, but because they're treasures that don't need a spotlight to shine. I had one such secret, something even Benjamin didn't know, and it was about to change everything. Let's go back 15 years. Benjamin was 13 then, still wearing braces and staying up late playing video games. Richard had been gone 6 years, and I was working myself to exhaustion at the sewing machine. It was a particularly hard time. My machine broke down, and the repair cost was $850, money I didn't have. Orders were slow, and I sometimes skipped meals so my son could eat enough. And that's when I met Professor Andrew Matthews, director of the community program at the University of Maryland. I had gone there to deliver a few uniform shirts for a client, a gym teacher who needed them for a youth outreach project. I was lost, wandering the halls, when a man around 50, with salt and pepper hair and thin-rimmed glasses, stopped and asked, "Are you lost?" I said, "I'm looking for Miss Martha's office to drop off these uniforms." He smiled. "Let me show you. I'm Andrew, I work here." He led me down the bright hallway, chatting kindly and without pretense. When we arrived, Miss Martha opened the box of shirts and beamed. "Lori, these are wonderful. The stitching is perfect." She turned to Andrew. "Look at this, she's a real craftswoman." He examined the seams closely. "How long have you been doing this?" "Over 15 years, I said. He nodded. "Have you ever thought about teaching?" "Teaching?" I was surprised. He explained, "Our school runs a training program for women in need. We're looking for someone to teach basic sewing. If you're interested, give me a call." He handed me his business card. I kept it like a ticket to another life. 3 days later, I called. At first, it was volunteer work 2 days a week, teaching 12 women how to thread a needle, hem, sew on buttons, patch holes. Then we moved on to cutting and stitching shirts, curtains, simple dresses. They were single mothers, widows, women who had survived abuse. Gradually, the class grew. After 6 months, there were more than 30 students. Andrew secured funding for more sewing machines. I was hired full-time, earning $1,200 a month, plus transportation. It wasn't much, but it felt like I was finally making a difference. I met Carol, once homeless, now running her own small workshop in Baltimore. Susan, a widow raising 3 kids by sewing baby clothes. And Margie, 58, working outside her home for the first time because her late husband had never allowed it. Now she was teaching others. Over 12 years, I helped transform hundreds of women's lives. In 2019, our project received a national award for community development. The ceremony was in New York, and Andrew insisted I attend. It was my first flight. I walked onto that stage to receive my certificate, posed for photos, and later saw my story published in the university newsletter. But I never told Benjamin. He was preparing for college. Exams then, caught up in friends, soccer, and the distractions of youth. I didn't want to burden him or make him feel pressured to be proud of me. In truth, I was afraid. Afraid he'd just respond with a half-hearted, "That's cool, Mom." So I kept it to myself. That secret became my other life, one where I wasn't just a seamstress, but Miss Lori, a teacher, a woman who changed lives. My name was etched on a plaque in the university hallway. Andrew wasn't just a colleague, he became a friend, one of the few people I truly trusted. In recent years, he'd been promoted and eventually became the dean, and he was the one who called me 6 weeks before Benjamin's graduation. "Lori, I have an invitation. The university will be honoring individuals who've made significant contributions to our community programs, and your name is on the list." I froze. "Me? You've trained over 340 women and helped generate more than $1.2 million in income for struggling families. Your work has changed lives. You deserve this." "I didn't do anything extraordinary. You did everything, Lori. You'll be honored during the upcoming graduation ceremony in June." My heart tightened. "June, that's my son's graduation." He paused, then said softly, "Benjamin Carter, Business Administration. Right? That's perfect. He'll see his mother being recognized. He'll understand what you've done." I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes. "Will you accept?" Can I? "Not only can you, you should. You've earned it." I hung up and cried out of fear, relief, and hope all at once. Maybe, when Benjamin saw me on that stage, he'd remember who I was. What I didn't know was that the same ceremony would not only remind him, it would also tear away every layer of deception Stella had wrapped around him. After discovering the blue envelope and accepting the honor, something inside me changed. On the surface, I was still the gentle Lori, waking early, working late, smiling politely. But inside, I had turned to stone cold, steady, sharp. Because pain makes you strong, but humiliation makes you unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, Benjamin drifted further away. He canceled our Sunday lunches, saying he was busy with Brenda's family. On Mother's Day, he sent a single text, "Happy Mother's Day. I'll stop by later." But he never came. That night, I saw his Instagram post a lavish brunch at Stella's apartment, Brenda beside him, the table covered in flowers, captioned, "Family is everything." Family and I wasn't in the picture. I didn't call, I didn't cry, I didn't curse. I just tucked the pain into the quiet drawer of my heart and began to act. The first thing I did was visit attorney Simone, an old client. I had sewn her graduation dress 10 years ago when she was still broke and fresh out of law school. Now she had her own firm, specializing in family law. She hugged me. "It's been ages, Lori. What's going on?" I told her everything: the distance between me and my son, the insults, the blue envelope, the plan to sell my house after I died. She went silent, then said, "Do you have proof?" I handed her my phone. Simone studied each photo carefully. "This is serious, Lori." She opened the folder I'd brought. "You gave your son this apartment?" "Yes. I sold the land my husband left me to buy it. I gifted it to my son for his birthday." "Do you have notarized documents?" "Yes." She took notes, then spoke firmly. By law, gifts from parents to children can be revoked in cases of severe ingratitude, such as insults, defamation, or attempts to profit from a parent's death. My voice trembled. He doesn't want to kill me, but he's humiliated me, demeaned me, and joined others in planning to benefit once I'm gone. Simone nodded. Then you have grounds to reclaim the property. She looked me straight in the eye. Lori, I have to ask, do you really want to do this? Once you file, your relationship with your son will never be the same. I took a deep breath. I thought about all those nights sewing to pay his tuition, selling the last piece of land Richard had left me, the look of disdain he'd give me at the upcoming ceremony. I said, I don't want to reclaim it yet. I just want him to know I could. I'm not the weak woman he thinks I am. Simone smiled faintly. I understand. I'll prepare the documents, gather the evidence, the testimonies, the financial records. When you're ready, you just sign. But remember, Lori, revenge doesn't bring peace. Justice does. The word justice echoed in my mind all the way home. I carried a thick folder, a head full of plans, and a heart turned cold. I printed out the photos from the blue envelope, arranged the tuition receipts, the land sale contract, the apartment deed. I placed everything inside a blue file identical to the one I'd found at Benjamin's apartment, a deliberate irony. And I waited. 3 weeks before the graduation, Stella called. Her voice was sugar-coated. Dear Lori, how are you? I'm fine, Stella. And you? Wonderful. I just wanted to mention, the upcoming ceremony will be very elegant, with many important guests, business leaders, officials. I think perhaps you should consider not attending, just so you don't feel out of place, you understand. I understood perfectly. She wanted to erase me from the perfect picture she'd painted a spotless ceremony, without the seamstress mother ruining the luxury frame. I replied calmly. Thank you, Stella, but I'll be there. It's my son's graduation. I paid for it, and I'll be present. Silence. Then her tone cooled. Suit yourself, Lori. I just don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I'll be fine, I said, my voice so steady it surprised even me. When I hung up, my hands trembled not from fear, but from anticipation, because Stella had no idea what was coming. Benjamin didn't know either. No one did. 3 weeks remained until the graduation. 3 weeks before that arrogant woman, that ungrateful son, and that deceitful daughter-in-law learned that Lori Carter wasn't a shadow, she was the storm. And storms don't ask permission. They just come, and they sweep everything away. The morning of the graduation, I woke at 5 a.m. Not because of an alarm, but because I couldn't sleep. All night I'd tossed and turned, stomach tight, heart pounding. I got up, made a strong cup of coffee, and sat by the kitchen window. The sky was still dark, a faint streak of orange just beginning to tear across the horizon. Today was the day. I showered for a long time, the kind of shower where you wash away fear and hesitation. I dried my hair, applied a bit of cream, and looked in the mirror. 68 years old stared back at me, wrinkles around my eyes, silver hair, calloused hands, but in my eyes, something had changed. Resolve. I opened the closet. The outfit I'd prepared weeks ago was still there. Navy blue slacks, a beige silk blouse with delicate embroidery around the collar, each stitch done by my own hands over 3 nights. It wasn't designer, no French label, but it was elegant, graceful, and mine. I slipped on soft brown leather sandals, dabbed lavender perfume on my wrists and behind my ears. I clasped the faux pearl necklace Richard had given me on our last anniversary. He once said, "They don't need to be real when you wear them, they look royal." I smiled, then put 3 things in my purse: my wallet, my phone, and the white envelope with the official letter from the university, the confirmation that I was to be honored. I also carried a bouquet of fresh white lilies, the kind Benjamin loved most, perfect and unblemished. I left the house at 7 a.m. The ceremony started at 10, but I wanted to arrive early to breathe, to prepare myself. I took the train, then transferred to a bus, reaching the university around 8:30. The auditorium was being decorated, flowers lined the aisle, banners hung high, and the rows of chairs were perfectly arranged. Parents were beginning to arrive, proud fathers, emotional mothers, even grandparents carrying bouquets bigger than mine. Everyone looked radiant, happy. I sat in the third row, right in the middle of the aisle. From there, Benjamin would see me the moment he walked in. I placed the bouquet on my lap, clasped my hands together, and waited. Slowly, the hall filled. Voices and laughter echoed everywhere. Camera flashes flickered nonstop. No one sat beside me. The seat to my right was empty, and so was the one to my left. Close to 10A. M. The energy grew louder. Graduates began walking in, dressed in their black gowns, faces glowing with excitement. I scanned the crowd for Benjamin, my chest tightening, and then I saw him. He stepped through the side door, tall, handsome, his gown crisp and neat. In that moment, I forgot all the pain. I saw only the child once held in my arms, the little boy I taught to tie his shoes, the teenager who cried after failing a math test. I lifted my hand slightly, giving a small wave. Our eyes met. He saw me, I was certain, but instead of smiling, instead of acknowledging me, Benjamin frowned, as if my presence embarrassed him. And then Stella appeared. She walked down the central aisle as though it were her own runway. A shimmering beige silk dress, slim high heels, expensive but tasteful jewelry, the kind of expensive that demands attention. Her hair was pulled into a perfect bun, her makeup flawless. Brenda followed behind, wearing a blush-pink dress, curls bouncing, her polished smile straight out of a toothpaste commercial. Benjamin looked at Stella, then at me, then back to Stella. I saw the decision take shape in his eyes. He walked toward her. "Miss Stella, would you mind walking in with me? I think it would be more appropriate. You've helped me so much through this process." Stella placed a hand on her chest, feigning surprise. "Oh, Benjamin, but your mother is right over there." And my son said in the calmest voice, "I know, but she embarrasses me." The bouquet almost slipped from my hands. He didn't even look at me when he said it as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. "She embarrasses me." Stella gently took his arm, slow and triumphant, like someone claiming her prize. "Then let's go, dear, we shouldn't keep everyone waiting." And they walked away, hand in hand, smiling for the cameras. Brenda followed, waving and blowing kisses, posing for pictures. As they passed, Stella glanced at me, that victorious smile flickering across her face. I sat still, silent, the white lilies in my lap beginning to wilt. Music filled the air, the lights dimmed, and the ceremony began. Applause erupted, cheers echoed, cameras panned across the hall. I took a deep breath and counted to 10. Inside my purse, the white envelope still rested neatly, the official invitation confirming my recognition. And right at that moment, surrounded by hundreds of people, humiliated by my own son, I swore silently, "Benjamin, you just made me feel ashamed in front of everyone. But wait a little longer, soon you'll learn what true shame feels like, and the one who'll feel it will be you." The ceremony felt endless, the dean's speech, the advisors, then the long procession of names. Every name announced came with cheers, tears, and applause. When Benjamin Carter was called, I almost clapped, but my hand froze midair, trembling, unsure whether to applaud or clench my fists. My son walked across the stage, smiling, waving. Stella and Brenda sat in the front row, of course, clapping wildly as if he'd won an Olympic medal. Stella even placed a hand on her heart, pretending to be moved. I just sat quietly. The bouquet on my lap had drooped. No one noticed. As the ceremony neared its end, I grabbed my purse, ready to slip out, go home, lock the door, and cry until no tears were left. But then Dean Andrew Matthews stepped up to the microphone. "Dear parents, students, and colleagues," his voice rang clear, "before we close, I'd like to take just a few more minutes." Everyone sat back down. The hall grew still. Each year, we graduate hundreds of outstanding students, but behind every success are those who work silently, the ones who build bridges, open paths, and change lives without ever seeking the spotlight. My heart began to race. Today, we want to honor one of those people, a woman who has devoted 12 years of her life to helping hundreds find new opportunities through our university's vocational program. The big screen lit up. The logo appeared, Sewing Dignity, the Sewing Education Project. I froze. This woman has helped 340 women in difficult circumstances reclaim their profession, their dignity, and their hope. Dozens of photos flashed, me with my students, smiling faces, hands sewing, bright eyes. There I was in the middle, hair tied back, wearing an apron, beaming. The hall buzzed with whispers. Andrew continued, "In just 8 years, this project has generated over $1.2 million in income for low-income families in the Washington area. And the person who started it all is a seamstress, a woman who believes honest work can transform lives." My throat tightened, tears welled. In 2019, the project received the National Award for Community Development. Today, we honor the woman behind that success. Lori Carter, please come to the stage. The hall fell silent. Then, slowly, heads began to turn. "Where is Lori? Who is she?" I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone. Andrew smiled. "Lori, I know you're humble, but today you can't hide. Come on up here." Someone pointed in my direction, and the applause began hesitant at first, then spreading, until it filled the room. I stood, hands trembling, the bouquet nearly slipping. I walked down the central aisle, each step heavy but steady. As I passed the second row, I saw Benjamin. He was standing there, pale, mouth open. Stella beside him was frozen, her poise shattered. Brenda had stopped fiddling with her phone, staring wide-eyed. I didn't look again. I just kept walking. Andrew met me at the stairs, pulled me into a hug. "You deserve every second of this." He guided me to the center of the stage. The entire hall rose to its feet. The applause roared like waves, a standing ovation for me, the mother who was supposedly an embarrassment. Andrew held up the plaque engraved in gold. Lori Carter, for outstanding contributions to community, education and social development, University of Maryland, 2025. He handed it to me, then added an envelope. "In addition to this honor, the university is awarding you a full scholarship for a master's program in social management because women like you deserve not only recognition, but the chance to keep going further." I couldn't speak. Tears flowed freely now, no shame, no fear. Andrew hugged me again and handed me the microphone. "Would you like to say a few words?" I took a deep breath, looking around at the sea of faces, bright, respectful, sincere. My eyes fell to the second row, where Benjamin now sat, head bowed, hands covering his face. Stella stared off, avoiding my gaze, while Brenda fumbled with her phone as if she could disappear into it. I stepped up to the microphone, my voice trembling but firm. "I've always believed that honest work is worth more than any title, and helping someone stand on their own 2 feet is worth more than any title. Inheritance." I paused, inhaled. "Thank you for seeing me, and for seeing the 340 women who have become my real family over the years." I stepped off the stage, clutching the plaque against my chest, my heart pounding like a drum. It was time to face them, to settle every debt in silence. I walked through the crowd, still applauding, dazed but composed, holding the plaque like a shield. People came forward to congratulate me, shake my hand, take photos. Professors I'd never met before lined up to thank me. Graduates hugged me, saying, "You're such an inspiration. What an incredible story." I smiled, thanked them, but my eyes searched for only one person. Benjamin. I spotted him by the side exit, leaning against the wall, alone. Stella and Brenda were nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the restroom or gone to escape the embarrassment. Benjamin held his diploma, staring down at the shiny tile floor as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on the plaque, and walked over. "Benjamin." He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were red, whether from tears or shame, I couldn't tell. "Probably both." "Mom, let me speak first." "No, if you speak now, it'll only be half-hearted apologies, and I no longer have the patience to hear them." He closed his mouth, nodded. I stepped closer. I looked straight into his brown eyes, the same eyes I'd seen the moment he was born. 12 years, Benjamin. 12 years I worked on that project. I helped countless women rebuild their lives, taught them to support themselves, to create something bigger than their pain. Do you know why I never told you? He shook his head slightly. Because I was afraid you wouldn't think it mattered. Afraid you'd just say, "That's cool, Mom," then go back to your phone, your games, your world. I didn't want you to feel pressured to be proud of me. My voice trembled, but I kept going. But the truth is, I should have told you. Because maybe then you would have remembered that your mother isn't just a seamstress, she's someone who deserves respect. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm not finished. My tone hardened. You told people I embarrass you as if I were an old piece of furniture you'd rather hide when company comes over. He dropped his head, shoulders shaking. Do you know what hurt most? Not your words. It's realizing you actually meant them. You looked at me and saw shame, failure, something broken that needed fixing, upgrading, erasing. Didn't you? He opened his mouth, voice cracking. Don't bother. It's true. I lifted his chin, forcing him to meet my eyes. You traded 30 years of your mother's sacrifice for a few fancy dinners and an expensive watch. You abandoned the woman who raised you alone for another who promised you shortcuts. Stella only wanted to help me. No, Stella wanted to control you. My voice was sharp as a blade, and you let her. Worse, you enjoyed it. I took out my phone, opened the photo folder, and showed him the pictures I'd taken from the folder in his apartment, the texts between Brenda and Stella, the email about the business offer, the plan to sell my house after my death. Benjamin's face drained of color, his hands trembling as he held the phone. Mom, you saw this? Yes. 3 weeks ago, when I brought you food. I looked straight at him. Maybe God wanted me to see who you really are. He handed the phone back, eyes down. I didn't know about that conversation. I swear. But you knew about Stella's email, the partnership offer, the clause about distancing yourself from relationships that might affect your image. Do you understand, Benjamin? I was that relationship. I was the problem to be erased. I haven't signed anything. I was just thinking, no, you were already accepting it. I cut him off. Dinner by dinner, gift by gift, poisoned advice by poisoned advice, you let them mold you into someone unrecognizable. Tears streamed down Benjamin's face. My son, taller than me by half a head now, stood there crying like a child. Mom, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to succeed, to have a chance. Growing up doesn't mean stepping on the person who raised you. I fought to keep my own tears back. And as for chances, I gave you all of them. I sold the land your father left us to buy your apartment, worked until my hands bled to pay your tuition. I gave up everything for you. And what did you do? You chose them. Just then, Stella and Brenda reappeared. They were whispering, but froze when they saw us. Stella quickly regained her composure, wearing that fake polite smile. Oh, Lori, what a surprise seeing you here. We had no idea. No idea. I turned to her, voice low but razor sharp. Or didn't want to know. She blinked, flustered. I truly admire you, Stella. You built an empire. But using my son as a pawn, poisoning his mind, planning to erase me from his life, as if I were an obstacle to your business, that's beyond forgiveness. Brenda cut in, her voice shrill. Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I held up my phone, showing her the screenshots. When she dies, we'll sell the house and buy a new car. I stared directly at Brenda. Is that a misunderstanding or something sick? Brenda's face turned ghostly pale. Stella's frown deepened, her elegance evaporating. You violated your son's privacy by reading his personal documents. I discovered people calculating what my death was worth. I replied calmly. And I also discovered that the apartment I gifted my son can legally be reclaimed due to proven ingratitude. I've already spoken to my lawyer. Everything's in writing. Benjamin's eyes widened. Mom, don't. I haven't yet, but I could any time. I looked at all three of them. Because I'm not the weak woman you thought I was. I am Lori Carter. I was honored by a prestigious university. I've changed the lives of 340 women. I raised a child on my own, and after 68 years, I've learned something respect is not begged for. It's demanded. No one spoke. Stella turned away, tugging Brenda along. Come, dear. We don't need to lower ourselves here. The sound of her heels echoed behind them, leaving only the scent of expensive perfume and defeat. Benjamin stood frozen, eyes hollow, his voice breaking. What should I do now, Mom? I took a deep breath, lifting the plaque. You need to finally grow up, Benjamin. Then I turned and walked away. I left him there alone, with his diploma, his shame, and the consequences he had created, because some lessons can only be learned through pain, and that's the only way to truly understand. 3 months after the graduation, I sat on the porch of my small house, the one Brenda once called embarrassing, the one she wanted to sell to buy a luxury car. I watered the purple flowers Richard had planted before he passed away. They were still blooming after more than 20 years. The soft afternoon light warmed my face as I took a sip of coffee and adjusted the final pages of my graduate thesis. That's right, graduate school. I had received a scholarship. 2 weeks after my son's graduation, I started classes. At first, I thought that going back to school at 68, surrounded by young students, would be difficult. But I soon realized that knowledge has no age, and my life experience was worth more than any textbook. My classmates respected me, and my professors admired me. I wasn't the oldest person in class, I was the most seasoned, and that made all the difference. The house remained exactly the same. The old sofa, the plastic tablecloth, the painting Benjamin once mocked for being outdated. But now, when I looked at it, I didn't see poverty. I saw history, endurance, dignity. And Benjamin? In the days right after graduation, he disappeared. No calls, no messages. I didn't reach out either. I let silence do what words couldn't. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I barely recognized my son. He looked thinner, eyes sunken, a rough beard covering his face. The Italian suits were gone. He wore a simple t-shirt and jeans. Mom, can I come in? I stood still, hesitant. A part of me wanted to shut the door, but another part, the one that still remembered the 7-year-old boy who cried in my arms after falling off his bike, wanted to hold him. In the end, I opened the door. Benjamin stepped inside slowly, like someone walking across broken glass. He looked around as if seeing the house for the first time. Everything's the same? Why hasn't anything changed? I replied firmly. Because nothing here was ever wrong. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer coffee, didn't start any small talk. I just waited. It took him several deep breaths before he spoke. I broke up with Brenda. I stayed silent, just watching him, waiting for more. I also cut ties with Stella, turned down the partnership offer. He shoved his hands into his pockets, voice trembling. They were furious. Brenda said I was weak, throwing away the biggest opportunity of my life. Stella said I was ungrateful that she'd invested so much time and money in me. I asked, "And what did you say?" He looked straight at me, eyes glistening. I told them they were right. I am ungrateful, but not to them, to you. I had to hold myself steady. Apologies are easy, change is hard. Words are cheap, Benjamin. I know. He pulled a folded, wrinkled sheet of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. That's why I brought this. It was a notarized document, a symbolic transfer of the apartment back to me, signed by him. I won't live there anymore. If you want to sell it, rent it, or take it back, it's yours. I don't deserve it. I looked at the paper, then at him. So where are you living now? I'm renting a small place with 2 college friends. It's tiny, a bit cramped, but it's mine, something I earned myself. He gave a faint smile. I just got an internship at a consulting firm. The pay is $2,200 a month. Not much, but enough. For the first time in months, I saw something in his eyes. I thought was gone humility. The kind that only comes after pain and learning how to stand again. Are you managing okay? He chuckled softly. At least now I can cook rice without burning it. That's progress, right? I couldn't help but laugh. What about the frozen meals I taught you to make? Haven't tried again yet. But if you're willing to show me, I'd like to learn. The silence that followed was different, not heavy, but calm. I folded the paper and set it on the table. I won't take back the apartment. It's still yours. But you'll have to prove you deserve it. Not with words, with actions. How? From now on, every Sunday, you'll come here for lunch. No phone, no excuses, no rushing off. And each time, you'll tell me one thing you learned that week about work, about life, or about yourself. But it has to be real. His eyes welled up. I can do that. I want to. Good. And one more thing. You'll come to my sewing center twice a month. Help with the organization, meet the women there, and learn what it means to change lives through real work. I will, Mom. Anything. I stood up and made 2 cups of the cheap coffee he used to mock. I set one in front of him. Drink. He took a sip and grimaced. Still too strong. That's because it's real coffee. Like real life, it doesn't come with sugar. He laughed, a genuine laugh. In that moment, I saw my son again. Not the puppet controlled by Stella, not the infatuated boy blinded by Brenda, but Benjamin, my son. Lost, hurt, but trying to find his way back. And the amazing thing was, 3 months later, he did. Every Sunday, right on time, he rang the bell with an awkward smile and a new story to tell. He came with me to the center, met the women who had suffered, listened to them, learned that success isn't measured by money or status. Then one day, he made a public post online, no filters, no performance, just the truth. He wrote that he had once been ungrateful, blind, and manipulated, that the mother he once felt ashamed of was the strongest person he'd ever known, that he had wasted years away from the only person who had never abandoned him. The post went viral, over 50,000 likes, hundreds of comments. Stella and Brenda deleted all their social media accounts soon after. Now, 6 months after graduation, Benjamin is sitting in my living room, helping me organize my graduate research papers, sipping strong coffee without complaining, laughing about old memories. He hasn't become the perfect son, because perfect sons don't exist, but he's my son again, and that's enough. I look at him and think back to that graduation day, the pain, the humiliation, the tears, but also the thunderous applause, the 340 women whose lives I helped change, and the plaque that now hangs on my wall beside the painting, Benjamin once called old-fashioned, which he now gazes at with warmth. In the end, I realized the most important truth. Real love doesn't beg. It sets boundaries. And those who can't respect them are left outside until they learn their lesson. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means allowing a new beginning, but on your own terms, not theirs. And I finally understood that the shame was never mine, it was theirs. Now, as I sit on the porch, sipping my coffee, and Benjamin's voice calls from the kitchen, "At least let me help you with the dishes," I smile at the purple flowers Richard planted more than 20 years ago. And what about you? Have you ever had to learn how to forgive someone in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else find their way home. And if you'd like to keep listening to stories about compassion and resilience, about people who rise after being broken, follow along so you won't miss the next story. Because in every experience, there's a piece of ourselves waiting to be found.